Alright, so welcome back. In this video, I'm going to go through making some fingers. I haven't sort of pre-planned this, so I'm just going to go all in. As I do this, just go through the process, the way I'm sort of thinking about it, and just see how far we get. So I think this is the reference that I pulled from the internet. Just normal hands, front and back. We'll start off with this middle one. So for the palm, we might not do the palm today, but just as a reference for you, generally your palm is about the same length as the middle finger. So not from here, from the knuckle. So from the tip of the middle finger to the knuckle, you can sort of measure out the palm of the hand quite easily from there. Okay, so I think this process will be a lot easier starting from Z-spheres. So we'll do that. So in the tool panel, I'm going to go to Subtools, Append, and Z-spheres. Great, so it's inside the first one, so let's just click the first one and press delete. Great, so I'm going to make it facing this way. You can make, actually, you know what? I'll make it facing up, just like the image here. I changed my mind. I'm going to make it face this way. Okay, so I'm going to bring the floor in so I can see what I'm doing. Let's press X for symmetry. And let's just create a Z-sphere. Make sure that's in the center. And let's just move that across. So let's press this button here for orthographic view. And let's just do something like this. We can move him a little bit later if we need to. So let's click that. Create a new one like that. And last one. So one for each bone. Then we can adjust the size afterwards as well. And the placement. So I'm not too worried about the size at this point, because I know I'm going to be adjusting that quite a bit. But I think what I'll do is just rotate these down like that. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good starting point. I might make him a little bit shorter. Like that. So nothing too fancy here. So let's go down to adaptive skin. Let's preview that. That'll be fine. So let's make adaptive skin. And then up here in the tools panel at the very top, let's press make polymesh 3D. All right, so if I press Shift F, I'm going to turn the floor off. It's very high poly, so I'm going to bring that all the way down. So let's go to geometry and Z remesher. And just do half. I'm going to turn adaptive off and just cut that down in half. So I'm going to bring this down quite a bit. It's almost done. Just keep going until it's fairly low poly. And with this finger, we're probably going to jump up pretty quickly in the subdivision levels. We just want to get something that's fairly low to work with. Maybe something like that. Let's press Shift F and let's get to work. So I'm going to bring up my move brush and start moving things around. So make sure I have symmetry turned on. And let's just get those knuckles in. So about there. I'm I'm going to turn AccuCurve on for this. You can get to that by going to the brush panel. And I'll move this out so you can see. Bring this over to the other side. Oops, don't know where that went. Okay. AccuCurve is just over here in Curve and AccuCurve. This just creates more of a pinch-like move brush. So it gives you a little bit more accuracy. Okay, so let's get that in. Okay, so from the top view, it looks pretty good. I'm going to bring this out a bit for the knuckle to sort of sit there. Okay, and let's bring up our clay build-up. Now, I sort of want to flatten the top a bit, so the top of your finger is actually quite flat. So I'm going to just brush over the top just to flatten that out a little bit. And from the bottom, let's make that go to a more of a point. Nicer point anyways. And then let's work out a little bit of the muscle structure. So you got the tip of the finger here. Might use a bigger brush size for this. This part doesn't typically come out too much, so I might just maybe lightly press Alt and brush that in a little bit. And down here, it's probably the most meatiest part, especially as it sort of comes to the palm. So let's bring a little bit of that out as well. I might brush up the top just whilst holding down Alt to flatten that out a little bit. Okay, so back to the move brush, let's make this a little bit wider down here. And as I do this, I'm sort of, actually haven't looked at this reference at all. I'm really just looking at my finger. As I sculpt, I sort of turn my left hand upside down and look at it. I think that's the best reference, looking at your own hand, but having some references on screen to look at it's pretty good as well. I always think that looking at your own body as a reference is the best thing to look at. Okay, so I think that's looking pretty good. So let's just subdivide this now. So Control D to subdivide. And remember, if you're unable to subdivide, you just need to make sure you press Make Polymesh 3D. Okay, so we've got a lot more resolution to work with. So with the move brush, with AccuCurve turned on, let's just get this shape a little bit nicer. And it's not as rounded towards the end. It's sort of a bit more of a tip like that. Okay. Let's use a smaller brush to get the knuckles looking a bit more prominent. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I think it's getting a bit too rounded, so I might just go along the sides here with that move brush and just move that up a little bit. And maybe just running along the top, move that down just to flatten that out a little bit. And I'm sort of like not considering the fingernail at this point. What I want to do is sculpt that fingernail in a little bit later. Great. So something happened here. So I'm just going to use the clay build up to bring that part out a little bit more. So let's start to work out the sort of meatier parts, and then let's go from there. So I'm just going to use a clay build up just to bring this part out a little bit. Then let's work here as well. Great. Let's look at the reference for some ideas to see if we're sort of going down the right direction. Oops. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Too shaky tonight. I'll use my mouse 1 sec. Okay, so let's move this part out a bit. Just give us a bit more room as we merge this to the palm. This looks pretty good. So I'm just sort of comparing it like that. Might be a bit wide, it might be a bit too curvy, but that's okay. Let's use the clay build up to add a little bit more to the sides. And I'm using a little bit of smoothing here just to even things out a bit. Okay. So this part here is too big. So this middle segment's too long. So I'm just going to use my move brush to move that back, but I'm going to turn AccuCurve off for this part. Let's tighten this up a bit. And the end digit or end bone here is probably a bit too long. Okay. Great, so let's Control D to subdivide, and then let's go into more detail. So let's just shape this out a bit more with a bit more sculpting. Add a little bit more mass around here. I'm looking at my own finger as reference as I do this. Let's get a bit of that going. And let's move this part down a little bit. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good for now. Let's just grab our damn standard. I'm just going to mark these areas so I sort of know where the knuckles are. Okay, let's grab our damn standard and let's work out the fingernails. So again, I'm looking off my finger. So if it doesn't look any good, well, I'm sorry that my fingers don't look that great, but it's something like this. Okay, so we've got the fingernail in. I might just go underneath as well to mark in some of those fold areas or those areas that sort of bend. This. And then back here it's more thicker, more meatier, so there's kind of like two lines here, almost. Let's see. Let's fix some of this up by going to our clay build up. Okay, so I'm just looking at my own finger, and that seems about right. Might use this standard brush just to give a little bit more thickness around the nail. And then above here as well, let's add a little bit more thickness. Right. Okay, so from the top, it's not as rounded, although I think in general that looks pretty good. Mine are a bit more like that. Okay, and the nail itself, that looks pretty good already, but I just might give a little bit of thickness over the top. And then that's a bit too much, so I'm just going to push that down. Like that. And whilst my nails are cut, I'm just going to give a little bit of a hangover, a little bit of a growth to it, just so it might look a bit more realistic, maybe. So to do that, I'm just going to mask out the nail as best as I can by holding down Control, just painting over this area. Okay, pretty good. And then Control, tap in the open space to invert, and just use the move brush to push that over a little bit. So my nails are more like this right now, but I'm just going to go a little bit over. And just push that out a little bit. Over like that. Great, and press Control, tap again to just invert that, and then what we can do is just push this little bit of meat over the top like that, just to give that extra little bit of realism to this fingernail. Okay. Control, drag a little box over to unmask, and I might use the move tool again just to pull out some of these parts here, just to give a little bit extra in these bits, and then push in a little bit. Okay, so that looks pretty good, I think. What I'm going to do is maybe Control D, subdivide one more time. And whilst you might not do this, I'm just going to add the little sort of the bone, the knuckle sort of coming through here. So I'm just using the standard brush, fairly large one as well. Just want to get that hint of that knuckle sort of coming down, and then blend that in a bit better by using my clay build-up, holding down Alt, and then blending that in. Okay, a little bit of smooth there as well. All right, so we're pretty high in resolution now. So I think this might be a good time to start doing these bits. So the little wrinkly bits on top of this, on top of the finger. I might do this facing this way. Might be a bit easier. So let's see. Okay, so that looks like a pretty good size. We can go over the top of them anyways to make it a little bit more sharper. But just in general, they're sort of kind of like this. And you might want to turn symmetry off at this point as well. But something like this anyways. And then let's just move on to the other side. Okay, so something like that. Let's get some more wrinkles in there. I'm getting pretty old, so got a few more extra wrinkles on my hands. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We might get rid of some of these anyways, but just to make some of these a bit more exaggerated, we can go over the top of them with a standard brush. Especially over this knuckle area here. That will be okay, I think. Then we can do the same over here. I think going asymmetry would have been a lot better. It's symmetrical at the moment, so the wrinkles kind of don't look as nice as I would like them to be, but it's okay. Then we can go over the top again with a pinch brush just to bring some of these wrinkles closer together. Give it a little bit more of a sharper look. I'm not really paying too much attention to where I'm doing this. I'm just sort of pushing that where it's needed. And then over here, we can use the pinch brush to bring these guys closer together to make it look a lot deeper than it actually is. Okay, and just a standard brush just to push some of these parts out. Play build up to get under it. Hold down Alt to thin out that nail so it's not so thick looking. And then I'm going to hit this part with a damn standard just to cut in there a little bit more to make it look like it's actually going in. And then corners here, just hit that with a bit of a standard brush. Okay. It looks all right. There's that sort of like, I don't know what to call it, that little bit of skin that sort of goes from this part to the nail. So it's not so deep like that. Let's just get that in there. Cuticle, I think it's called. And just to highlight that detail a little bit, let's use the damn standard. Now we're zooming in quite a bit, so it's going to show that it's quite low detail, or it's sort of polygons. So we might need to subdivide a little bit more to get that detail if we need it. You don't have to sculpt everything, especially if it's not going to be seen from this sort of extreme close up. But if it is needed, then we do probably need to subdivide once or twice at this point. But that's pretty much it for this. At least this level of detail anyways. Might sort of come into here and just do some slight cleanup. Just with this nail, I'm going to smooth out a little bit just to have that looking a bit nicer. And maybe cut in a little bit more around here. At least on my nails, they're a bit sort of deeper on this side than up here. Then just add a little bit more form in areas that you need it. Okay, and then we can work under here. Now I'm just going to do more or less the same thing where I'm just going to come into here with a dam standard and detail some of these areas. Now I'm not so much looking at my finger at this point, even though I probably should. But more or less I think we can probably get a sense of believability just by following the forms of the shapes that we created earlier. Right. Just tidy this area up a little bit. And then same thing, just maybe use the standard brush. Just go over the top of these guys just a little bit, just to add a little bit more contrast, and then the pinch brush just to bring some of these guys a little bit closer together, just to make it look tighter than it actually is. So I might increase the intensity here just to speed up that process a little bit. Maybe just add another one right here like that. Great. So I think that's pretty much it. If we want to get these sort of wrinkles, there's sort of like wrinkles, at least on my finger anyways, there's sort of these vertical wrinkles like this. You could probably get a lot of it just by using your clay buildup, going back and forth whilst holding down Alt. You could get that effect quite easily, I think. And same thing with here. Maybe a smaller brush. And on the fingers, or the tips of the fingers, is more of an actual fingerprint. But I'm just going to smooth this area out a little bit. But let's just see if we can do something here for that. All right, so I think everyone's going to have slightly different results anyways, if you're going to do a finger. But I might pull this part out a little bit. Bring that up a little bit like that. over here, bring this down a little bit more using the move brush. And to allow for this to sit in the hand a bit, I'm just going to open this up from the base. Cool. I think that's pretty much it. If you wanted to do all these like light, small wrinkles here, you can. Although it will probably take some time to get this sort of pattern going, but let's see. Oops. So we want to use a damp standard for this. We might need to increase the resolution of that as well. So maybe a smaller brush size. I might bring the intensity down. Sort of hatching on the top there. Try to get like a skin effect. It's not really working. Probably need to subdivide this another time. It doesn't look too bad actually. Let's move some of these bigger parts back in. And over here, see if we can add some of that skin detail in. And you probably want to take a much more careful efforts to get this look than what I'm doing, but you sort of get the idea anyways, I think. Go over some areas to make that blend a little bit better. I might use a smooth but lower intensity just to soften some of these parts here. I think it's a bit too sort of obvious. Gone a bit too far to detail. And over here as well. Great, so I think that looks pretty good for about half an hour. I think, don't know how detailed anyone in the class would be making a finger. But if you do, hopefully this helps. Great, okay, so for the other fingers, you can use this, this one here. So this one would be the middle finger. So we can duplicate this and then move it over. Okay, so this one will be the pointer, and then we can duplicate that again. And this one here will be the ring finger. And we've got to do the pinky as well. So I'm making them straight, right, just so we can sculpt them again quite easy. If you sort of bend them, even though it's more realistic to have them bent, right now it might be a little bit harder because we are going to be changing this up, because obviously our pinky and pointer finger and thumb especially don't look the same. And from this view, we can bring them down. So I think I bent that too far. Grab this, and then we'll bring that down. So something like this. This one goes down quite a bit further. So your pinky. And this one goes down as well. Okay, so what we can do here, some of these fingers won't need a lot of changing. Right, some of them will just need a little bit of a tweaking. So these guys here are more or less very similar. The pinky is quite obviously different. So from this view, we can scale this down like this. So if it's doing that, it's because you got symmetry turned on. So turn off symmetry, and you should be able to scale the right way. So this one will be a lot thinner. And there will be some changes to it. This one here, no, I'm not really a anatomy sort of on finger experts, but this pinky is shorter. I'm just looking at my own finger, to be honest. And this one here is about there. It's more or less the same looking anyways, just slightly different in shape. Okay, so let's just get that shape in. So from here, because we've built this sort of base finger, we can just shape this out to make it unique and different, sort of different enough that it doesn't look like we've sort of copied the same finger over. So we are making this asymmetrical now, so just keep that in mind, that one side won't be the same as the other. Pointier. And I think this one's quite a bit shorter as well. Something like that. And we'll bring this guy closer. Okay, so make sure you just shape them so they're different. So they don't all look the same. And you definitely want to go over them again, the wrinkles anyways, because the wrinkles on each finger look too similar. So you want to go over them and change them up a bit. You can start off by moving them around like this, but you definitely want to go over them just to make them unique enough that, again, it doesn't look like you've just sort of copied the same finger over. Now for the palm, it's nothing special. Just go to Subtool, go to Append, and a cube will be fine here. And just scale this up to sort of fit. And the palm is roughly the size of the middle finger. Something like that will be fine. Scale that down. And usually with the palm, I sort of just go in straight away and make it look good. I don't normally go through a process of making a blocky version, or too blocky anyways. I sort of go in there and just make it look good. I guess look the way it should straight away. And I don't think I really have a process with hands or palms. I just sort of tweak it until it starts looking like a hand. So I'm just smoothing all the corners out of this box that we put in. Now it's just a matter of just sort of getting that shape right. So I might smooth this part out. And I might put AccuCurve on as well for this process, so I can get more of a pinchier grab on these guys. Actually, I'll turn that off for now. So I do want a larger sort of grab here. So let's get the fingers to fit first before we do anything. And we need an area for the thumb to sort of come out like that. Something like that anyways. Bring that smoothing intensity back up. The thumb will sit about here. Probably should look at my references. The rest will sort of come into this area here. Great, so something like that. Let's just subdivide. Actually, before we do that, the box in ZBrush has really bad topology. So we have a pole up here and down here. So you always want to subdivide, zero mesh before you subdivide. The reason being, if I subdivide a bunch of times, you can start to see this sort of fanning going on here. And that's, you can't really get rid of that. And then when you start to sculpt over this part, it can start to artifact like that because we've got so much geometry going into the one spot. It doesn't really work. So you can sort of see that effect where there's a fanning going on, and then as I create a stroke here, there's a little problem happening there. Right. So definitely want to go into geometry, zero mesh, just do the same and then zero mesh that. And that will give you something even to work with. Okay, so let's subdivide that. And I don't know how detailed I'm going to go with this, just because, again, I don't really have a process with palms. Just sort of sculpt until it's, you know, looking more or less correct. But let's just get the major points in. So you got this part here for the thumb, like that. These are where your knuckles sort of sit. Something like that anyways. And then you got this part here. Okay, so, and then from the top, we'll have these parts that go in. That. And then we'll use a standard brush to grab the bones that sort of come across here. Cool. So I think that's a good starting point. So let's just use our clay build up, and then let's just get this looking decent. So let's just sculpt some of that muscle in. This part sort of goes in. I'm sort of looking at my hand as well as I do this. bit boxy, so I might hold down Alt a little bit and see if I can remove some of that boxy look. Okay, bit of meat over here for the knuckles. There's a bit of a gap here. Okay, so over here it gets quite thin, so we'll try to get that going. Work our way around in between each bone. We'll try to press Alt to sort of cut in. And a little bit meaty over here. And over here. It's a bit boxy up here, so we'll get rid of that. And a bit of extra volume over here for the knuckle of the thumb to come in when we're ready to put that in. Okay, so let's blend some of this together. So let's just add a bit of material back in. That. And then let's get some of these bones to look a bit nicer. Okay. So I'm going to use the move brush just to level some of these guys out a bit. And again, I'm looking at my own hand as reference when I do this. So we can blend this in a little bit more. And I might use AccuCurve for this as well. Let's cut in using a clay build-up. It's quite thin over here in between each finger as it sort of rises up to the knuckle. And we'll try to blend that with the finger a little bit more. Again, it's quite thin over here as well, so let's get that in. And then with this part, let's just pull that out a bit. Push some areas back in. These guys here, we can pull out a little bit as well. Okay, so it's not looking too bad. It definitely looks like gloves, like he's wearing like a fingerless glove. So we need to sort that out. I'm going to bring this finger up a little bit more. And that will give us a bit more a realistic positioning. Try to get these fingers bones to behave a bit. I'm having a little bit of trouble because the topology isn't that great. You can see it's sort of curving around and sort of fighting with it at this point. That's okay. We'll push on because I think we're going to subdivide soon anyways. So I'm holding down Alt just to blend this knuckle back in and back here as well. So yeah, we're going to subdivide soon anyways, so we probably don't need that. Z-Remesher. So I'm going to bring this guy up, and then maybe use the move brush just to push some of this down and these parts up a bit more as well, just to blend that in a bit nicer. Okay, and under here, move some of these guys around. It's a bit thick down at the bottom here, so I might turn off AccuCurve on my move brush and just push them in. Okay, so it's more or less going to be the same thing. You can sort of see that it's starting to take shape, I think. It just needs more of this sort of work where we're just going through and just getting the shape to look the way it should. And obviously looking at your own hand, I think anyways, is the best reference. Just because it's right there. I have this reference image, but I really didn't look at it all too much. But, you know, the odd sort of angle that I could easily sort of see it from this image opposed to my own finger or hand. But I think your own hand is the best reference. Okay, so let's get the thumb in before we close this video because it's getting a little bit long. So let's get this thumb in, let's duplicate that, and then let's just move that over. So the thumb, like this bone here, it's like this bone, right? So we're going to we can either cut it off or just plonk it in there. I think it'll be easier just to plonk it in. So I'm just going to shorten this thing. And then from this view, make it wider. Okay. And then from this view, let's just rotate that. Let's hold down Shift and rotate that at about 45 maybe 40. And then let's rotate that over. Let's put that into place. Let's make that face down a little bit as well. Maybe about 25. And then let's just plonk that in there like that. Actually, I'll probably go down 45. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Maybe a bit further out like that. And I might bring this over a little bit like that. Okay, so now it's just a process of bringing this knuckle over and blending that in. Okay, and with this guy here, we can use the move brush. Just augment the shape a little bit. And my thumb does not look like that, so let's fix that up. Yeah, more or less, it's something like that. And on my thumb, we'll do a standard brush and we'll just get that knuckle bone thing in place a little bit more. And then we can just go back to the palm and then just, you know, slowly but surely get that to sort of work a bit more. The resolution difference is fairly obvious here, so don't let that bother you because we will subdivide this anyways, and we'll make it, we'll sort of match up the resolution quite quickly. We're just getting a sort of an idea of how this would sort of work. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there for today. It's getting a bit long, the video, but you know, I'll obviously finish the palm because that's not quite done yet. And when you're done, you can sort of start rotating these guys out a little bit to make them fit in place a little bit nicer. And we can give it a render. So we can go render, best. We can sort of start to see how it might work. So maybe from here, it's probably, the fingers are probably a bit short now. I think I made the palm too big, so I'll have to make all the fingers a bit longer. But you can sort of see that it's starting to take shape, and it probably wouldn't need that much work to get it to look correct, right? Just got to adjust the fingers a little bit. I think they're all a bit too short now. Pinky looks pretty good though. And the palm itself is probably a bit too, overall size is probably a bit too big. Like thick wise, it's too thick. The fingers are a bit sort of thinner, but the palm is a bit too meaty as well. It's too bony. It needs to be taken back. Like my palm doesn't look like this. So it's just a matter of just bringing all of these guys in until it sort of comes together. Eventually, you start to see it come into place, and it'll go from not looking right to yes, it looks right. Partly because I think you're working off your own hand if you're doing that, so you know if something is right or not quite easily. Okay. Anyways, I hope that one was helpful. If you're doing any other hands, so if you've got more of a creature type thing, it's more or less the same thing. Like I don't really change the process up for an alien-like hand or more of an animal like palm or paw. it's kind of just you're just working with different digits, and the palm is a little bit different. The process, or the general process of just starting off with one finger, shaping that, copying that over for the others, and then working on the palm and then getting it to fit. That's more or less the process I do for all creatures or things that I make.